Welcome to Multiplication Matters with speaker and author Dr. J.D. Payne. Dr. Payne is the pastor for Church Multiplication at the Church of Brook Hills in Birmingham, Alabama, and has written several books on the subjects of missions and evangelism. Here's J.D.
Hey, Faith family. It's good to be a part of another edition of Multiplication Matters. I hope that these episodes are a blessing to you as we think about the multiplication of disciples, multiplication of leaders, small groups and churches in Birmingham, across North America, and throughout the world. Today, I want to speak particularly to the parents of children within our faith family. And I want to talk about an aspect of raising children that oftentimes we don't talk about within the church, and it's most unfortunate because it is extremely important not only to their faithfulness as they grow and they develop in the Lord, but also so critical, so important to the making of disciples of all nations in our own neighborhood and across the world. And that has to do with the issue of working with your students and training them up in the way of the Lord and the way that they should go, or your children, when they're in that student age, if you will. So kind of what we talk about around here is being somewhere around junior high and high school, that 6th grade through 12th grade range. That's kind of the audience that I have in mind when I'm thinking about parents in this episode of Multiplication Matters. One of the things as parents we need to do is we obviously need to teach our children the way of the Lord and love for the Lord. And the second thing that I think is important that we need to do that's very closely connected to that is that we need to teach our children, we need to teach our young people to have an awareness of God's Word. So we're students of God's Word, but we're also students of God's world. In other words, we want to raise up our children to think with a global mind. We want them to think in terms of not only understanding God's Word and having it in one hand, but figuratively speaking, we want them to have the newspaper in the other hand. We want them to have the news in the other hand, so that they're thinking about the world around them, and they're thinking about God's Word, and they're thinking about how they then live out what it means to be a follower of Jesus in this world that the Lord has created as one who is going to make disciples of all nations in their own hometown or in another place across this country or throughout the world. And so teaching them about loving God, yes, teaching them about knowing God's world. But the third thing that I think is important for parents, for us to keep in mind, particularly in those years of that student life, before they go off into college or before they go into the marketplace, and that is beginning to teach our young people how to think as a wise steward when it comes to God's Word, God's world, and then how can they be a part of developing marketable skills, obtaining a marketable degree, something that would best position them out into the community, whether that is here in Birmingham, whether that's in another city across North America, or maybe that's in a city in another country. But how can they be best positioned into the global marketplace using skills that they're passionate about, that they've developed over the years, or using that degree that they've obtained as they went off from high school into college, begin to help them catch that vision, help them to be able to see the wisdom in that and the stewardship in that. And that's something they need to be thinking about while they're young. One of the things that I think is really helpful for us as parents to do and very practical is, when we begin talking to our kids, even younger than junior high, but talking to our kids and asking them the question, so what do you want to be when you grow up? Or, our kids come to us, they say, this is what I want to be, Mom. This is what I want to be, Dad, when I grow up. And let them talk. So when I was a kid, there was one time in my life that I couldn't decide whether or not I wanted to be a karate teacher, an exterminator, or an astronomer or an astronaut. And so we need to foster that thinking within our kids' minds and encourage them along those lines as all parents do. But here's where I think we need to take it to another level when it comes to just living out the kingdom ethic in our life and in our homes, and that is helping our kids to think about, all right, so if you're an astronaut, if you're an exterminator, if you're a karate teacher, if you are an astronomer, how can you best prepare yourself now for obtaining that vocation in the future, not so that you may consume material possessions on yourself, but so that you can be used by the Lord in those areas of influence across the world, across this city, to be able to share God's love with others and be able to make disciples. And so we begin teaching our kids that this notion of work And this notion of God's Word and this notion of God's world and this notion of what it means to be a follower of Jesus in the Word, or in the world with God's Word, these things are wed together. And so work is not divorced from that which is spiritual about making disciples, but they're unique together. They're linked together. They're very unique in one another, being bound together under that whole kingdom ethic, that understanding what it means to follow Jesus. And so I just want to encourage you, parents, as you begin working with your young people and you begin to talk to them about what it means to be a follower of Christ, and you begin to ask them those questions. What are you interested in? What do you think you're going to do as you go to college? What do you think you're going to do maybe after high school? That a part of that journey of teaching them to love the Lord with all their heart, part of that journey about teaching them to understand what's going on in God's Word, is also a part of that journey where you're helping them at a young age to think in terms of how they can best position themselves after college or after high school into the global marketplace, be it down the street or across the world, that they could use their passions, their talents, their gifts, their degrees, their skills for the advancement of God's glory as they make disciples of all nations.
Join us next time for another installment of Multiplication Matters with Dr. J.D. Payne.